So today we have Nancy Hill here with us. She is the founder at the Media Sherpas. Nancy, thank you for joining us. Maybe just kind of give us a little bit of background on yourself so our audience knows a little bit more about who you are and what you do.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, as you said, I am currently working as the founder and CEO of my own company, Media Sherpas, which is based in Cleveland. And prior to that, I spent 10 years as the CEO and president of the 4As, which for those of you who may not know it, is the trade association, the American Association of Advertising Agencies, that represents, I'd say, probably 80% of the agencies in the US. It gave me a pretty unique perspective on agencies doing that for 10 years because I worked with everybody from the big major 30,000 employee holding companies to agencies with less than 10 people on a regular basis. So I had to be able to straddle both of those worlds. And it was interesting for me to end up in that position because prior to that, my background was all agencies, and I'll work it backwards. Prior to that, I was the CEO of Lowe in New York. Prior to that, I was the president of Hill Holiday in San Francisco, which had been the office of Goldberg Moser O'Neill. Prior to that, I was a managing director and partner at Chiat/Day in Los Angeles. And prior to that, I was with TBWA in St. Louis. But I started my career and spent 10 years at Donor in Baltimore. So very much, I've worked in mid-markets, I've worked in big markets, I've worked at small agencies, big agencies, and again, all over the country in the Midwest and on both coasts. So I really feel like it gives me that unique perspective that most people don't get if you either stay in one market or especially if you only work in New York. So at my core, I'm an agency wonk. I love the people in agencies. I love the environment. And so even in my latest iteration, that's what I'm doing is I'm helping agencies to figure out where they go next, how to keep growth, or how to pivot when they need to pivot. And it's especially interesting during these times, as you can imagine.
Yeah, you deal with a lot of different people, a lot of different agencies, like you said, small and big. What are some of the biggest challenges that folks are going through right now that you're dealing with?
I'd say the biggest challenge is cash. If agencies didn't get on that right away when the first series of lockdowns happened, and they didn't understand that maintaining their cash, and I don't even like to say cash flow, it's really about your burn rate more than it is about flow, because every single part of the ecosystem has slowed down payment. And the minute that they slow down payment, it slows your cash flow. So it's all about the cash that you're sitting on and how you manage that. So I think that is the biggest struggle, especially for agencies who've never been through something like this before, is trying to figure out how they're going to maintain and come out of this strong enough to survive, because we're notorious as creatures of not saving for days like this. And we're not really good about keeping, a 6-month burn rate in the bank. So I think a lot of agencies found themselves coming up short on that cash, but that is the single biggest issue that everybody's faced with right now.
So I know we need to keep business going, and I know we need to keep that cash flow going, but we also have to be sensitive to what other folks are going through. How are some people handling, some of those terms and how they ask for it?
Well, I think it depends on who's asking and who they're asking it of. I think clients are coming now. Even when they, to be honest with you, I think in some instances, clients who have been sitting on cash for a long time are asking for payment terms just because they think they can. And it's an unfortunate byproduct of what's going on right now. What I'm telling the agencies I work with is, if you feel like you need to negotiate with your clients on extending what are already extended payment terms, do that, but make sure you're getting something in writing that it's only going to be for the next 6 months. Because what I worry about is that clients will do this, and then everybody's going to have to live with it coming out of the situation that we're in right now. So it's perfectly okay to push back on the client and say, I'm happy to extend you some payment terms that are longer than normal during this period, but I need it in writing that 6 months from now, we're going back to the payment terms that we already have.
Sure. So dealing with, our staff and our employees and keeping them going and keeping them working, what are some of the issues that you're finding with, some of your clients in terms of the management of the people that you have in your staff and keeping them productive?
So let's start with keeping your staff, just period. I think that it's unfortunate, but people will get laid off during an environment like this. And we might as well just call it what it is, because that's the only way that businesses can survive is to have to, again, manage their cash. And part of that is having to make sure that they have the cash coming in to pay the salaries. And if they don't, they have to make some unfortunate decisions. And I think the hard part is doing it fast enough that you can affect your business versus hanging on, hoping that something's going to change. And then you find out that you actually have to go deeper. I have said to many people over the course of my career, I've been laid off, I've had my friends get laid off, and I've had to do layoffs. And by far, the most gut-wrenching is having to do the layoffs. But I find that if you do it with dignity and you do it with respect, people are pretty understanding about the situation that you find yourself in. And yes, it's very difficult for anybody to receive the information that they're losing their job. But again, if you try to do it in a way that makes them feel like they're valued, even though you're having to let them go at this moment, it's better off. I've seen a lot of agencies doing furloughs instead of layoffs so that they can keep people's benefits for however long that they can do that. I've had some agencies who are doing work share programs. They're a little unwieldy depending on what state you're in. And I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to be the person who's going to give you the advice as to whether to do it or not. But some states will actually allow you to put somebody at 50% salary, and then they can apply for 50% unemployment. It's a little bit better than just doing whole straight unemployment. There's lots of different ways that people are going about trying to make this right for their employees. One of the things I've always loved about agency people is they really do care. So what you're seeing is employers who are doing their best to try and keep everybody on staff that they can. People are taking salary cuts. I've seen founders and partners in agencies who are taking deep salary cuts in order to keep more people on. So, I think everybody is doing the best they can to keep their staff. Now, when you talk about keeping them motivated, the funniest thing is after we got through week 1 and week 2, I see creativity flourishing. And I think that people are finding in many ways that without all of the constraints of what a normal workday looks like or what a normal brief might even look like, they're finding very creative ways to answer the briefs and to talk to their clients. And I think that there's a sense of community, even with your clients, that we're starting to see clients in their home environment now. We never saw that before. So I think there's a pretty strong sense of, I don't want to use the cliched, we're all in this together, but I think there is a pretty strong sense of, okay, let's see what creativity really looks like.
Yeah. Do you think that, are you seeing that like clients are giving, creatives a little bit more leeway now, or are they being a little bit more hands-on, in terms of that creative?
I think it depends on the client, really. I mean, that's always true. But I do think that there are no rules that have been written for this time in our lives. So there is a little bit more freedom in terms of, well, we don't really know what the right answer is. So we might try some things that may or may not work. I think that everybody's being super conscious of the tonality of anything that they're putting out. And trying to be as empathetic as possible at the same time trying to continue to run businesses.
If we were to pivot and look into the future, let's just say that we flip the switch tomorrow and we're all back to work again. I can't imagine we're just going to get back to everything as normal, within that creative process, just like that. What do you see? How does this transition kind of into the future in terms of, like how we communicate and how we, kind of deal with some of those creative issues?
It's going to be, I don't think, I'm not sure that it has really dawned on everybody yet, but it is not going to be what it was. It just won't. I think we have been changed forever through this. I spend a lot of time talking to agencies all over the world, and over the last month, I've been fortunate enough to have conversations with people in China and Japan and Singapore, and who have just started to go back to work within the last 10 days. And what they're telling me is that people have fundamentally rethought their lives in terms of how they want to function in this world. Now, when you live in big cities like Beijing or New York, certainly, and you rely on mass transit every day just to get to and from work, it's a whole different ballgame in terms of your personal well-being and taking care of yourself to get back and forth to work than what we go through here in Northeast Ohio in getting in our own car, which we control. But when people get to the office, even if they feel like it had been quote unquote sterilized overnight by the cleaning crew, they're super aware of their own environment. They can't sit next to each other like they've been doing because they're trying to maintain 6 or 8 feet apart. And so all of a sudden your office environment looks very different. And I think agencies who have largely moved to open environments over the last 10, 15 years, for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is it was supposed to foster collaboration. They're not going to be able to have people sitting right next to each other, because even when we do go back to work, there's going to be, whether enforced or personally because I want that, there's going to be social distancing that we're going to have to deal with. So just think about our environment and what that's going to look like. You also, I think, find that people who, and I've heard this from many people, are actually, to a certain extent, enjoying the freedom of being able to work from home, and would like to go to some sort of hybrid when they go back. Certainly, we don't want to replace in-person meetings with, especially with clients, with this, because I don't think it's sustainable over time. I think you do still need to be able to, quote unquote, read a room. But we might have offices that look very different than what they look like now. They might be an office environment that has 10 meeting rooms that is set up specifically just to be able to do a meeting with a client or a prospect or something like that. But people might not be working there every single day. If you have leases that are, for the next 10 years, you're going to probably have to get creative about how your staff comes in. Some agencies are talking about part of the staff might be in on Monday and Wednesday, and part of the staff might be in on Tuesday and Thursday in order to keep enough separation between people. There's a lot of things to start thinking about before it's actually time to go in. And then the way we think about our clients' businesses, if people's lives have fundamentally changed and they're rethinking the way they're living their lives, let's just take digital, for instance. Yes, digital became a big part of our industry many years ago. But if digital now is the default way that a consumer wants to interact with a brand or make a purchase, then we have to rethink how we're even talking about buying a car or any of the other things that we normally would go out and physically do. Because I've seen, actually, I think it's Lincoln who's talking about delivery to your door, and you don't even have to touch anything. So all of those things are going to start to play into the way that we're talking to our clients about their businesses. And I think you're starting to see the people working on briefs now thinking about that already.
From an agency's perspective, who can we turn to? Is it folks like yourself, to kind of like give us some guidance on how can we pivot our business?
Certainly there are people like me out there who are advisors, but I also think turning to each other. Again, going back to being an agency wonk and loving agency people, I find, especially independent agencies, that people want to help. So if you know other agency founders or agency owners that you can get on the phone with, and by the way, they're also very generous with their time. I think just talking through things with people really can be helpful. I know that I've participated in quite a few forums with agency founders. and just sharing information about how they're handling things like negotiating with their landlords, how they're handling, I mean, some of the compensation things that we were talking about, sharing things that are working for them. I think those are the best ways to get people to start thinking about what might work, or something that didn't work, and please don't even go down that path. So first and foremost, I think sharing with each other. But with regard to the clients, remember that the clients are struggling because their whole business just got turned upside down. And unless you're a grocery store, you're not doing business right now. So you've got, you as an agency have to help the client figure out what their business looks like. And I think there's never been a better time for what agency people do best, which is applying creativity to a business problem. Right now. And if you're not going to your clients with thinking on that front already, then somebody's doing it behind your back. Because the other thing that's happening is clients are open to talking to anybody that they think can help them. And new business is happening. So I think that we have to remember that first and foremost, we're there to help our clients by solving their business problem. And if we're thinking about that every single day, then we're going to be in a much better position.
So just speaking on what the message is right now that we're talking about, like I hear all the time, like we're here for you, and everything's based on COVID, but at a certain point we're going to become numb to that.
Right.
So like what are you seeing from some of your clients that are kind of maybe like you said earlier, a couple weeks ahead of us in kind of like the COVID cycle. And how they're using their messaging to kind of, are they getting out of talking about, a COVID world yet?
I think it's more likely that they're talking about a post-COVID war post-COVID world,
Right.
In which things have fundamentally changed. It goes back to what I was just saying about the acceleration of digital delivery of everything is huge. And with people having a heightened sense of their own personal well-being, they're going to demand that. So I'll give you an example of something that I thought was, I had my husband and I moved into a new house right before all this happened. And I had some deliveries that were scheduled way before, of some sizable pieces that we had ordered. And one company handled it incredibly well. They had it all set up so that they told me, you don't have to worry, just come to the door. They'll unpack everything on the front porch, and all you have to do is let them take a picture of you with your thumb up or thumb down saying that it's okay, and that's how we do the signature. And then a few days later, I had another company who wanted to insist on me giving them a signature. The driver didn't have a mask on, he didn't have any gloves. It's just, those companies thinking about their supply chain all the way through are the ones who are going to come out of this in a much better position. And again, I think that's where we as agency people can help our clients to think through all of that and what that's going to look like in a post-COVID world.
Yeah, I was totally thinking like it's okay to be different. It's at this point right now, we've always said it's okay to be different, but now more than ever, it's okay to rewrite some rules to,
Yes.
like just because we did it one way before, that doesn't mean anything now. Even if we did it 2 weeks ago, like today, we're in a different environment.
Absolutely. And here's one of the most brilliant stories I heard about agency client partnership. There's an agency in Florida who had a restaurant group as a client and had a supermarket chain as a client. When this first happened, they went to the supermarket chain and said, listen, this restaurant chain is about to lay off all their employees. Are you going to need extra people? And they got them to hire the people, not all of them, but a lot of the people from the restaurant chain before they even got on the unemployment. So here, it was a smart way to go to take care of two different clients at the same time and bring them together to make something happen. And I think the more that you can do that kind of thinking for your clients and do it in a way that solves a business problem, it's not necessarily an ad or even an ad-like object. That's where clients are going to want our creativity and they're going to appreciate it.
We got a handful of questions people wanted to ask you, and one of them kind of deals with that, and I might as well just ask it now. And, Sarah asked, how are agencies guiding brands who now have to reach displaced audiences? So it kind of goes a little bit about with what you were saying there. Maybe, talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, displaced is such an interesting word because we know exactly where everybody is. Um, so we do know how to reach them. But I think that it's displaced more from an emotional standpoint than it is from a physical standpoint. And I think that the brands that are doing smart things, so for instance, Delta, just last week reached out to all of their medallion members and told them that they were extending their status through 2021. Because they know that nobody's going to reach their status level this year. And so conceivably, these are their best customers. So why not go ahead and get ahead of the game and extend that? And then a week later, Hyatt did the same thing. So I think that while nobody's advertising, get on an airplane and here's a low rate between Cleveland and Miami right now, but there are ways to communicate with the customers that you need to communicate with in the appropriate way. And I think that's how agencies are helping clients think through that and how best to make sure that they're not losing the brand's foothold, whatever that is, whether that's awareness or loyalty or what we want it to be during this time.
Sure. And then here's another one that Jason asks, what are some do's and don'ts of remote pitching?
So remote pitching has been an interesting topic. I'll just give you an interesting anecdote that I heard from one agency. They were having trouble doing pitches over video, and they couldn't read the room. The screens would freeze. They weren't sure if the clients were actually reacting to what they were presenting. So they started recording their presentation ahead of time. Because you're also, again, if you're going to have 4 different presenters, you're having to record each person and do that whole and get up there, quote unquote, and present over Zoom. So they've recorded their presentations, sent it along with the deck ahead of time, asked the client to review it. So then when they do get on this kind of a Zoom call, they can do more about answering questions. And that was much more successful for them than trying to do it over a live platform, if you will, which I thought was really interesting. And I have a couple of other clients who are now going to try that as a result.
Okay, then we have one more here. Lauren asks, we're confident this too shall pass. So how can creative services companies prepare for and stay focused on the long term?
Well, for me, the long term is A, the health of your own business, and B, how you can be helpful to your clients in their business. And it goes way back to the beginning of this conversation, managing your cash, managing your people, making sure that you come out of this strong, and don't eat a lot of junk food in the process. And I say that laughingly, but it's true. You have to treat your business the same way you're taking care of your physical health, and then coming out of it strong enough to help your clients as they try to navigate what a post-COVID world looks like, and being as creative as I know all agency people can be in applying that creativity to those business problems. The biggest thing for me is that, again, we don't have a rule book for this. There is no guiding principle or blueprints that we can follow as to how to come out of this, which to me is the optimistic part of this whole thing, because that means that we're going to have a whole new way of thinking about the world. And I know that creative people love that. So I think we will come out. I'm glad that she said it the way that she did. This too shall pass, and we will come out of it. And I think we'll come out of it with a whole new decade of creativity that we can't even imagine.
Well, just that's a fantastic wrap-up line. I think you're, just a kind of the mic drop moment there. But I'd like to kind of give you the opportunity, like if, in closing here, if there's some things that maybe we didn't talk about that you think might be important for, kind of like our audience to know, or is there any additional thoughts that you might want to give?
I think the only thing I would say is no matter what it is you're dealing with, you're not the only one dealing with it. And I think that this is probably more so than any other time, the best time to raise your hand and say, I need help, and talk to other people. because you cannot do this alone. There's no way. Nobody knows the answers, but certainly other people are faced with the same issues. So we are a community, we're a strong community, and I think we need to rely on each other.
Just to wrap this up, what's the best way of kind of getting a hold of you and asking questions?
I will do my best, but if I get inundated, I have to manage the clients that I already have first. But I would love to engage with the community here. The best way to reach me is Nancy H, all one word, at theagencysherpa.com. You can follow me on Twitter. It's at NHHill, or LinkedIn always. But I'm pretty easy to find, and I'm local, so.
Perfect. Well, again, thank you for doing this for us. This was, fantastic information, and it's kind of good to hear someone in your position say the things that you did. It kind of becomes, at least for me, a little optimistic, and I hope that kind of brings some optimism to some of our viewers too. That we're not alone. We are dealing with this together, and there are ways to work through this. So I appreciate your time. I know you're very busy, and from our entire community, thank you.